I'm a brown American that didn't grow up with other brown people. And that might sound like a so what kind of thing to some of you. But when you look at other brown people, they either grew up with their communities or they grew up with white folks. I didn't have that. And as a result, the way that I move throughout my daily life, the way that I think is very different than the average brown person you'll meet. And I wouldn't say I pride myself on this, but I'm pretty vocal about the fact that I am not conventional in my way of thinking the way that other Desis are. I don't play the game. I don't do the politics. I don't do the sneak distance. I don't do any of that because I didn't grow up that way. The way that I grew up, in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, the environments I grew up in, when you had a problem, you figured it out. You handled your business. Desis don't move like that. So as I got older, and now I started interacting with Desis a lot more, I had a lot of butting of heads. I had a lot of clashes. Till this day, I still do. Simply because we look at life differently. I grew up in North Philly. North Philly is not very Desi heavy, especially when I was there growing up. I don't live there anymore. It's been a long time since I've been to Philly. It's been about 10 years. But when I was there, it wasn't like that. I come, just from just being completely honest, hoods and ghettos. I didn't come from any nice background. I mean, I didn't have a bed to sleep until I was 8 years old. My first bed was a bathtub. Like we was broke, man. We was in the hood. And when you look at the average brown family, they're on average the highest median earners. They go to the nicest schools, drive the nicest cars, live in the nicest neighborhoods, etc., etc. Good for them. Not hating on that, but it's just to put things into perspective. That seeing a brown guy in the trenches wasn't very common. And the way I also knew this was because none of my friends also knew other brown people apart from me. I'm the only brown person that most of my friends have ever known. And I grew up in black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And those communities embraced me in a way that when I started interacting with Desis more, they didn't. I was outcasted and treated very, very differently for things that were out of my control. But I'm very, very grateful for how I grew up because I have a lot of gripes with how the Desi and the brown community operates. I have a lot of gripes on their outlooks on life. I have gripes with the fact that a lot of their ignorance just comes from the fact that they live privileged lives. I have a lot of gripes with these things because I've seen how cruel this world and this life can really be. And I come from the lens of it's important that all of us are informed about what's going on. But being ignorant about world climate, social climate, is a level of privilege that people don't understand. If you don't have to sit and think about how things affect you on a day to day, that's from a place of privilege. You have your parents to thank for that. Because your parents are going to be affected. Even if they make a lot of, either way, you have someone to thank for that. Desis like to do this thing where they play these games a lot. It's like politics. It's a game. And I don't play that. So when I got older and I started interacting with Desis more, it was a problem. It was a problem because when I'd get that sly comment from an uncle or that sly comment from someone my age, and I would respond back with the same energy that they would show me, it was a problem. I'm not being labeled as a disrespectful, mischievous kid. When in reality, I mean, the way we grew up, bro, is you got a problem, you say it to my face, we handle it right then and then, we move on with our lives. We don't sit there and gossip and talk shit for the rest of our lives. We just handle it right then and there and we move on. Brown people don't move that way. Brown people are very non-confrontational. But we'll get more to that in a second. Growing up in the areas that I did, I realized these systemic disadvantages we were put in involuntarily, and not only put in, but we couldn't really do anything about it. Going to underfunded high schools, living in underfunded areas, seeing people rely on government programs, it exposes you to a type of life that the average Desi has never seen, that it doesn't even cross their mind. It's to the point that I've had conversations about politics before with other Desis, and they will look at me with a straight face and say, "Why would I care about that? That doesn't affect me." Of course, I wouldn't think about that when I was voting because what that got to do with me? And having this kind of conversation is again another level of privilege that they don't even recognize. But apart from the early exposure to the systemic issues that we face in the United States of America, it also introduced me to so many different cultures, so many different ways of life, so many different backgrounds, so many different perspectives on life, that it allowed me to develop empathy, understanding, and compassion at levels that still translate to me to this day. One thing that I say is that I don't think you should ever be in a friend group or ever have company where it's all the same race or it's all the same religion. You need to have diverse backgrounds. You need to have diverse people around you because it allows you to develop that empathy, that understanding, that compassion. So I'm very blessed that even though our upbringing was very rough in Philly, that it let me adopt that people skill early on. And this people skill is something that the average brown person severely lacks. Severely lacks. And it got to a point for me. I went, what was it, 17 years of my life without interacting with brown folks? Maybe the occasional brown folk every now and then. I'll still watch the Bible. Like, I still speak the languages, right? Like, Punjabi is still my mother tongue. I still speak Urdu. I I grew up still on Bollywood and Punjabi stuff. Like, I still am tapped in with the culture, but I didn't run into someone like me very often. It wasn't until I was about 17, 18 years old where I really started running into them more because I became more religious. Not religious, but I started practicing my faith more. And there are a lot of days at the mosque. So that's when I started interacting with them more and I realized how different they were to me. How their struggles, or what they deemed as struggles, were so different than mine. Their outlooks on life were so different to mine. Their entire approach to life was so much different than mine. And not only that, but it was an approach that is naive. It's an approach that doesn't work. It's an approach that is going to doom them in their future life. But then you have to sit there and ask yourself, I mean, what do they know? When you remember the statistics from earlier, but just in case you forgot, the average brown family are the highest median earners. They go to the nicest schools, etc., etc. Can you really be mad at them if they don't understand systemic issues and how they really affect from the bottom up? Are they going to understand the impact of what redlining does, or what gerrymandering has done, or what the war on drugs did? Like, are you going to be able to understand those things? No, because you're not in circles where you would have to be exposed to that. And I feel like one of the things that allows me to connect with people on the level that I'm able to do is the fact that I've gone through this early. I've seen this early. The trials that everyone else is going to have to face in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, I faced now when I was young. I've been through things that a child should never have to go through. And I'm not saying that in a way to give myself pity or whatever it is to look for sympathy. I don't look for sympathy from anyone, ever. I'm saying this to get a point across. And that point is that growing up Desi, around non-Desis, prepared me for life better. It allowed me to develop social and people skills that I would not have been able to develop if I grew up like everybody else that is Desi. And I get a lot of flack for saying stuff like this. I get a lot of flack for calling a spade, and that spade being is that brown people are in their own fucking bubble. They are in their own bubble. And when I have tried to respectfully pop that bubble, to say, hey, that way that you think about this certain thing, that's not correct. Here's why. And you take that loving approach, that respectful approach, these same people spit in my face, talked down on me, outcasted me, made me feel as if I'm nothing, made me feel as if I'm inferior to them, simply because they go to a nicer school than me, drive a nicer car, I live in a bigger house. And it's funny, because like I said, when the way that we grew up, I said, yo, you got a problem, we figure it out, we handle business, right? Whether shit we talk it out, we scrap it out, but we move on with our lives. After we try, we move on. Brown people don't operate that way. They're very non-confrontational. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because when you think of the cycles, the traumatic cycles that now brown folks of our generation have to deal with, that people are starting to try and be more vocal about when they try and talk about these things, it's very community centered. It's very community centered. It's things that you would think that, yo, if you just had a conversation about that, you'd be able to solve that problem. But Daisies would much rather let things build for decades on end, pass that trauma on to their child, than just have an uncomfortable conversation. And when I've tried to put my best foot forward, extend my arm out to open this type of discourse where we can have these type of conversations, I've been ostracized by my own people. And it used to really bother me. It used to really bother me because, to a degree, even growing up, even though I'm very grateful growing up in the black boroughs and the Hispanic boroughs and all the things I learned growing up from there, I had a lot of influence growing up in those boroughs. It's another thing, right? I mean, a lot of brown people like to say I try too hard to act black because the way I dress or the way I talk or the slang I use or whatever. It is what it is. But back to my point. What was my point? I gotta think. It used to really bother me that brown people and Daisies were not open to this discourse. They weren't open to this conversation. Because growing up, even though I grew up in these neighborhoods, to a degree, I always kind of wanted brown friends, someone I can go on long night drives and listen to Bollywood or Punjabi music with. Oh, there's a new Punjabi film, a Bollywood film that came out in the theaters. Let's go watch it. Let's go have a good time. I didn't have friends to do that with. And it used to, like I said, really bother me. And I remember one time talking about it with my therapist, and one thing that she said to me was, you kind of pride yourself on this idea that you're going against the grain on what Daisies usually do. They're not confrontational, you're trying to be confrontational. They like to let things build and not address things. You want to be able to have conversation. You are doing things that don't align with the politics that Daisies like to play. Keep in mind, she's also Daisy. You are doing things that don't align with the games and politics that Daisies like to play. So of course, when you are calling these things out, when you are calling a spade, when you're being direct, when you're being honest, when you're being blunt, of course they're not gonna like it. Because you're challenging the system. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to challenge that system, because this is a road that you have to walk by yourself. Because there's not people out here doing the things that you're doing. And that's not in some way to stroke my ego, it's just a point of reality. And when you think about it, it makes sense. If you are Desi, a Desi American, you grew up around brown folks your whole life, all this game and politics stuff, you just look at as either one, it's just a part of the game, it is what it is, or two, you don't even realize it's politics because it's just ingrained in your head that this is normal behavior when it's not. So now when you have someone, maybe doesn't look like you, maybe doesn't talk like you, or comes from the same areas you do, speaks the same languages you do, but he doesn't act that way. He addresses things. He doesn't play these games. He doesn't play these politics. He's very direct, whatever it is. Of course, it's going to throw people for a spin. Especially the people that benefit from the politics. Especially the people that benefit from the games. Of course, they're going to have problems with this stuff. So why is it going to matter? Why does it matter to you so much if they don't rock with the stuff that you're saying? They're not going to be able to understand that stuff. So who cares? Another thing, one of my friends told me once, as he kind of reinforced this. One time we were going out to eat. He was talking to me about how my adjustment has been in my new school and everything like that. And I was talking to him, and he was just like, bro, I mean, honestly, like, we're getting old, right? We're trying to establish our lives and all that. I mean, coming this late in the game, right? This late in the game when it comes to interacting with brown folks, of course you're going to get pissed off by some of the stuff that they do because you're not used to it. You're used to a different kind of environment when it comes to handling your business. Because it's true. Growing up in black neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods, we just handle things differently, bro. Was there still petty drama? Of course, that's going to exist everywhere. But I mean, bro, not to like try to sound fake gangster, but you grow up in the hood and you got a problem, you handle your business, bro. It's how it is. You just handle your business. And when that's not in the motto of the average brown person, of course you're going to get upset. Of course you're going to get frustrated that, yo, we could just talk this out. Why not just do that? But not everyone's going to think that way because their parents don't do that. The cousins ain't do it. The people they beefing with don't do it. So he said, you have to ask yourself, is it really worth investing with these kind of people when you're just not going to get along with them, bro? The average person you're just not going to get along with. They're not going to agree with the things that you're saying. They're not going to see things the same way you're seeing them, nor are they going to try to understand you. You got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? Is it really worth the investment at this point in your life? And I said, damn, you might be right. So after I had that conversation, I kind of stopped looking for that type of sense of community within my own people. Not some sad kind of way like, oh, bichada, like he's just trying to fit in, and poor guy, no. It's not nothing like that. It's just calling it how it is. But one of my goals with the content that I make is to challenge these precedents, these ridiculous precedents that our communities have set. Not just challenge it, but also work through the issues that these precedents have caused us. Work through them. Because we are being affected by it. And we cannot continue to allow future generations to also be affected by the same BS that we have now engulfed from generations before us. And it's crazy because we look at people that are in my generation that used to call out these uncles and aunties and whatever for acting the way that they do, and now they're just becoming just like them. And they don't even realize it. And when you do try to call them out for it, they just repeat the same tendencies. They just repeat the same patterns. And it got to a point for me where, yo, I'm calling this stuff out. Am I the crazy one? Am I doing something wrong? Because why am I just simply saying, like, yo, you shouldn't act like that. Yo, you shouldn't do this. Not from a way of judgment, but it's like, bro, like, come on, we grown. Like, you got a problem, just talk it out. Bro, don't be saying all that. And I was the one getting problems for it. Small, trivial things that for us, like, yo, this ain't even a big deal. Other people made it their entire point for weeks, months on end. It's not that serious, bro. But this is the stuff they thrive off of. And they thrive off this stuff because this is what they've been taught to thrive off of. As you look at the family dynamic. Look at the family dynamic of a Desi family. The average Desi family. The father's emotionally distant, unavailable, works, comes home, shuts his brain off, refuses to have any sort of connection with his wife or children. The mother's emotionally volatile, takes it, and then everyone in the household gets affected by it. The children are also being affected by the emotional distance from the father, not getting love and validation from their own parent, and then the mother just being crazy. And not only that, but the mother's usually a stay-at-home wife, doesn't make any money for herself, doesn't have anything to her name, completely not leeches off, but is dependent on the husband. What else is she going to have to talk about other than other people and things she's been, I guess you could say, spoiled with? As like, I know I'm not the best husband, but here's a Birkin. Like a compensation for your struggle. So when you're growing up and this is all you see, then you go adopt the same thing. So now these conversations have just now had a Gen Z twist to it, have had a millennial twist to it. Ain't nothing changed. It's the same bullshit. So as a result, growing up in non-Desi environments as a Desi has now made me struggle building relationships with Desis. Because you realize how bubbled off they are. And does every culture, every race, every community have this to a degree? Absolutely. But I think it's the worst in Desi communities. I genuinely do. And it hurts me to see the same people my age fall into the same things. That I'm going to look back 5, 10 years from now, think about this person, go look at what they're doing with their life, and they just did the same exact damn thing that their parents did. That's going to suck to see, man. And it also sucks during this process because I know I'm not crazy. I know the way that I operate isn't unethical. It isn't weird. It isn't slimy. I handle my shit. But it is annoying when other people don't realize that the way that I handle things is based off personal experience and years of work on myself. They just see it black or white, and they won't know why I act the way I do, why I operate the way I do, why I'm vocal the way I do, the way I am. They're not going to understand the way I approach life and issues and whatever it is until they're 30, 40, 50 years old, and they're starting to finally face the trials that life has to throw at you. I just happen to face it younger. So in a way, I can't really get mad at these folks. You know what I'm saying? I can't really get mad at them because what do you know? All you've known is to get a good SAT score, get to a good college. Most of these dudes have never had to do their own laundry, clean the dishes. So yeah, when you've lived that life of comfort and coddling, of course, when some dude out of nowhere coming out here and be like, yo, you need to get your shit together as a dude. Or yo, y'all women, y'all gotta lower your standards because y'all out here acting ridiculous. What you mean that he gotta buy you a Birkin and take you to Nobu every week? What are you talking about? That's not how this life shit works. How about you start working for 6 months and come back to me on this conversation? Of course, when I start saying things like this, of course it's gonna rub them the wrong way. Who the fuck is this guy? Where did he come from? What does he know? I know a lot. But I guess it's just one of those things where you can take the horse to the well, but you can't make that motherfucker drink the water, man. You can do everything you possibly can. Take it to the well, fill the bucket, bring the bucket up, put it right to their snout. But if they don't want to drink out that bitch, you can't force them. What you gonna do? Grab their tongue out and make them do it? What you gonna do when that happens? You gonna grab the tongue out? They're gonna kick you. Next thing you know, your liver shot because you just got a horse kicked. Then what? Only person that got affected is you. And just for that, 30 minutes later, the horse gonna come back and drink the water on their own accord. So now you're sitting there with a fucked up liver from the horse kick. Damn. Like, it's not worth the struggle. It's not worth the pain. It does suck though. It does suck though when you've wanted that type of community, when you've tried to build it and it just hasn't worked. It does suck. But like I said in the beginning of the video, the thing I am most grateful for is the exposure to systemic issues, the exposure of diverse communities, and the fact that I understand how life works. The way that I grew up has allowed me to experience every major trial possible that you could possibly think of. I've been through it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've gotten secondhand from it at the least. So there's nothing life can throw at me that I don't know how to handle anymore. Is it still going to suck when it gets thrown at you? Yeah. But at least you can navigate it and then just say, damn, that sucked afterwards. Instead of it happening to you, sulking for 40 hours, 40 years of your life and then working through it. I know how to handle it. And I can sulk about it afterwards. And honestly, the way that I look at it is that when I got all these people saying negative things about me, all these people saying certain things about me, I'm doing something right. I'm pissing off the people that this shit is addressed to. And that's fine. That's perfectly okay with me. As long as my dogs, as long as my mom, as long as my sister, as long as my close circle aren't saying the same things about me the way these other folks are, I got nothing to worry about. When you got people out saying all this shit to you, it means you're doing something right. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm probably just gonna keep the videos weekly for the time being. But Mr. Beast, we coming for you. All my socials in the description. Check it out. Like, subscribe. Peace.